Hey guys, welcome to my review for Pokemon Adventures, more specifically the first two story arcs. Why am I doing it this way? Well, when I bought the first box set, I was under the impression that I was buying the first story arc. But in reality, it was actually the first two. Good job on your marketing there, Viz. Because my plan was to review each part of the series separately, like JoJo. But I decided to review the first two parts together, mainly because they have a lot of the same characters, the stories are very connected, and they both make up the stories told in the first generation of Pokemon. So without further delay, I'm sure a bunch of you have those fancy Ultra Moons and Suns to get into. Let's take a look at Pokemon Adventures Red, Blue, and Green, and Pokemon Adventures Yellow. So Pokemon Adventures is a manga series that, holy shit, has been going on for a long time. I had no idea this series was as big and as popular as it is. It's actually the 6th best-selling manga of all time. However, the particular part of the story I am going to be looking at today was serialized between 1997 and 1999. It was written by Hidenori Kusaka and the art was provided by Mato. So I hope you're a Pokemon fan, because I'm not going to be explaining what Pokemon are, but we're just jumping right into the story. So Pokemon Adventures Red, Blue, and Green follows the journey of the Pokemon trainer Red. Red starts off as a rookie trainer from Pallet Town. He quickly meets Professor Oak, the Pokemon professor, who provides him with his first starter Pokemon, a Bulbasaur, and also gives him a Pokédex, a type of digital Pokemon encyclopedia, and gives Red the task of traveling across the land searching far and wide for each Pokemon to understand the power that's inside. I'm a huge Pokemon fan, if you didn't already know that. Red isn't the only one on this task. We also have Blue, who is Professor Oak's grandson. He's kind of a dick, and he serves as a rival to our protagonist. Now, if you're at all familiar with the first generation Pokemon games, this sounds pretty familiar because, it's basically the same story structure. Red goes off with a mission to catch all the Pokemon. He also decides to challenge a bunch of the gym leaders across the Kanto region to get all the badges and eventually make his way to the Indigo Plateau, the Pokemon League. There's also an evil organization in the Kanto region known as Team Rocket who capture and experiment on different Pokemon against their will. Their presence is made very known and oftentimes Red will have to face off against them. So yeah, all pretty standard first generation Pokemon stuff, but there are a few twists. There's another Pokemon trainer known as Green. I don't really want to give too much away of her, but she is definitely a pretty significant part of this story. There are also a bunch of things that really won't happen in the order you're expecting. But despite that, the first part of the story, the first 3 volumes, is pretty standard first-gen Pokemon stuff. It is worth mentioning that this is a children's manga, okay? Don't go in expecting anything crazy. The writing is pretty good so that it can really be enjoyed by all ages. But yeah, nothing too special. The first part of the story is very episodic. Almost every chapter, Red is moving on to a new town to get a new gym badge. It moves by very quickly. Not too fast. It's actually pretty perfect for kids because, 20 pages might tell a new story. I mean, there's obviously continuity, but, Red will move on to a new place, a new conflict arises. He'll have some Pokemon to fight, have some people to help, all that good stuff. Again, nothing too complex. All the themes boil down to are, there's nothing stronger than the bond between the Pokemon and the trainer, treat your Pokemon nice and all that shit. And you see, I was a little disappointed at first that this was all this was. It's just, it's another retelling of Pokemon Red and Blue, just with, a few more added twists. But then you have Pokemon Adventures Yellow. Now, Yellow takes place 2 years after Red, Blue, and Green, and it follows a brand new Pokemon trainer, Amarillo, also known as Yellow. Which kind of makes me wonder, are all these kids named after colors? Is that their actual name, or is it just a nickname? Who the fuck names their children after primary and secondary colors? In fact, where the fuck are their parents in the first place? I'll get a bit more into that in a minute. But anyway, I don't really want to give away the plot of Yellow, because it's a bit of a spoiler. I mean, you probably don't care about spoilers. You probably know how Red, Blue, Green ends. But either way, this changes up the format a bit. Instead of a more episodic approach, it's actually just a full 4-volume story arc. And honestly, it was really great. As a Pokemon fan, I loved Pokemon Adventures Yellow. It expanded on all the best elements about Red, Blue, and Green and delivered a really satisfying story arc. And the ending also got me pretty excited to read the Gold and Silver story arc. So being an adaptation of a video game, you obviously gotta make some changes to make things work. And I have to say, what Pokemon Adventures does is pretty interesting. We all know the anime adaptation, how things had to change to work for a television show. And the same thing applies here, in order to tell the story of a game in a manga, a lot of changes had to be made. But honestly, I feel they do a much better job making changes than the anime does. There are a lot of elements from the games that make its way into the manga in a really smart and interesting way. Pokemon levels, Pokemon evolution, all the stuff that's completely different in the anime, it's much more faithful to the games in the manga, and it actually really works. And for that reason, it's not surprising that the creator of Pokemon actually thinks that Pokemon Adventures is the best representation of the world that he created. But with all the great things that Pokemon brings to the table, you also have all of the inconsistencies, of which there are quite a few. Now, fans of Pokemon have grown to live with these inconsistencies. We're used to them by now. We sort of brush them off just because, you know, it's part of the package. But, you know, if we're just looking at the story, these inconsistencies are a bit more apparent. Kids don't have parents. I don't know where the fuck they are. 12 or some shit, they just go off on adventures. Then you have stuff like the Pokedex, and I never understood this when I was a kid, and I still don't fucking understand it. They really make no effort into how it makes sense. And what do I mean by all of this? Professor Oak wants to document all the Pokemon, so he sends all the trainers out to collect data on them. What I want to know is, why does he not have data on these Pokemon? Is there no way to get it? Like, they have internet, they have wireless shit and computers in this world. Is there no, like, international database on all of the Pokemon that have been discovered? If you scan a Pokemon and all their stuff shows up, wouldn't he have needed to program that in there? I can get if you just give it to a trainer so they can have their own database of, you know, collecting Pokemon, but, you know, he's a scientist and he's using this as a research project. Like, he doesn't have data on these Pokemon. How the fuck does that work? You also, okay, spoilers, Mew and Mewtwo are in this manga, okay? Mew is revealed first. Scanned in the Pokedex is the 151st Pokemon. Now, at this time, Mewtwo has yet to be created because he's a man-made Pokemon. So how did they know what the 151st Pokemon was before the 150th? Then there's the point of how many Pokemon exist in this world. At the beginning, there's 151 Pokemon. That's all that exists. We don't know anymore. Yet, literally separated by a mountain, there is an entire other region full of different Pokemon. Don't give me any bullshit that Kanto and Johto don't have any contact, because they obviously do. There's a fucking train that runs through it. They don't talk with other people. They don't know what other Pokemon exist in other regions. What do you mean Sentret hasn't been discovered yet? They're like live fucking everywhere in Johto. Yeah, I'm thinking way too much into this. I mean, it's no real fault of the manga. It's just stuff that has always bothered me my whole life, and you really just gotta learn to live with it, because this type of stuff is never really gonna get explained. Anyway, let's talk about the characters in this manga. There really isn't much to say about Red. He's exactly as you would expect. He wants to be a great Pokemon master. He wants to catch them all. I was hoping he would have a bit more personality, but he is pretty generic. Blue and Green, on the other hand, are pretty great, okay? Blue isn't just the asshole that he is in the game. He actually goes through a pretty significant character arc, and by the end of Volume 7, you can definitely tell he went through a lot of growth. Green doesn't really have a big character arc, but I thought her addition to the cast was really great, and I did enjoy her character. Then you have Yellow, who I think is a much better protagonist than Red. There's a neat little twist to his character, which, I'm gonna be honest, I guessed immediately as I saw his character, but then I had to remind myself, you know, this is a children's manga. I'm sure it went over a few kids' heads, probably blow their tiny minds. I don't fucking know. So yeah, good shit. I'm really hoping that we do get a chance to see more of these characters in the following Pokemon Adventure stories. But you also have a whole bunch of side characters. You know them all from the games. You know, you got Professor Oak, you got all your gym leaders, and of course the Elite Four. All of their personalities are expanded on. They're given much better characters than the game, because let's be honest, in the games there really isn't much to the gym leaders' characters. Some of my personal favorites include Blaine, Sabrina, and Agatha, but honestly all of them are done pretty well. And you of course have the big bad of Team Rocket, Giovanni. Though I will say, I was not really expecting some of the roles that these characters would have. And I was kind of shocked when I realized who the true villains of this story, more specifically Pokemon Adventures Yellow, were. And while I still think Red, Blue, Green was a bit basic with its story and characters, they're really expanded on in Yellow, and I thought the enjoyable story made these characters a lot more likable. So as for the art, it's pretty much what you would expect, and for what it is, it's pretty damn good. It's very basic, very cartoony and childish, but it is without a doubt Pokemon. If it was any more detailed, it would just look weird. While this art is definitely the artist's own style, it definitely captures the spirit of Pokemon. And while most of these characters are from the game, the few original ones do have really great character designs. This is Pokemon, of course. There are a lot of battles, a lot of action scenes. They all look really great. And I had to say, this is probably the most realistic portrayal of Pokemon battles, even when compared to the games, because, you know, when you're fighting against Team Rocket, these bad guys, they don't give a shit about your Pokemon. They're gonna go attack you, because you're the one commanding the Pokemon and you're weak as shit. I like that. I like how stuff like that was taken into account. And while this is a children's manga, it's also a lot more intense than the anime and games really ever get. It's not gory, but there are some times when it can get a bit gruesome. There are a few moments where Pokemon straight up get murdered or are gravely injured, and not in the most pleasant pleasant looking ways. So yeah, overall this art really isn't anything to write home about, but it does have a lot of charm and it does work really well for Pokemon. So there you have it, those were my thoughts on the first 2 story arcs in Pokemon Adventures. Like I said before, it is a children's manga. I'm not going to recommend you drop everything just to read it, but if you are a big fan of Pokemon and crave something better than the stories that the anime and games have to offer, because let's be honest, those stories are never really anything to write home about except maybe Sun and Moon that did have a pretty lit story, then I would definitely consider checking out Pokemon Adventures, and I give these 2 parts my final score of 7 out of 10. If you are interested in checking it out, Viz Media has the whole series licensed and it's available in multiple different box sets. I reviewed the first 7 volumes, the contents of the first box set. I got it for a pretty good price and it's definitely the best way to own this series. And if you're craving more Pokemon, I mean, you don't have to look very far. You have at this point the many video games, all of which are pretty good, some better than others, but you know, they're generally all quality shit. Brand new one, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, just came out today. I'm sure many of you may be playing it yourself. It might be a while for me to get it though, because I still owe Todd Howard some sexual favors. And you have the anime, which honestly, why the fuck didn't this get adapted into an anime instead? Okay, nostalgia aside, y'all know the Pokemon anime isn't that great. This series is pretty good. It would have made for a much better anime. And I really hope that somehow, someday, it does get one, because it definitely deserves it. Anyway, those were all my thoughts on the first 2 story arcs in Pokemon Adventures. Thank you all so much for watching. You can leave your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you all soon for my final review of 2017 for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Stone Ocean.
I wanna take the ultimate step, find the courage to be bold, to risk it all and not forget the lessons that I hold. I wanna go where no one's been, far